Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, helping higher education marketing leaders share knowledge about learning, strategies, and tactics that are relevant today. See what you can learn today by listening to one of our episodes.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast hosted by Concept 3D. Concept 3D helps bring your campus to life virtually. We've served the higher education community for over a decade with our award-winning interactive maps and virtual tours. Improve your campus communications, student engagement, and recruitment with our powerful location-based virtual solutions. My name's Shiro, and I will be your host today. I'm currently the Director of Demand Generation at Concept 3D, and I'm speaking from my home in Silverthorne, Colorado, which is a small mountain town about an hour west of Denver. And today I'm super excited to have DJ Menifee join us today. He's currently the Vice President for Enrollment at Susquehanna University. DJ has years of plethora of experience in admissions and enrollment. He's also really passionate about leadership, which we'll go into a little more detail today. DJ, thanks for joining us.
Not a problem. It's a pleasure to be here with you and Concept 3D. I look forward to the conversation, and I also look forward to just hopefully sharing some tidbits or some diamonds in the rough that the audience can hold on to and implement into their day-to-day.
Awesome. And where are you joining us from today as well?
Yes, I'm joining you live from my office at Susquehanna University
Cool.
in the admission. So coming straight from the campus community. And again, looking forward to engage in conversation about topics that are near and dear to my heart, and as well as to our division and institution's heart as well.
Awesome. That's great. Can you start us off with one fact and then tell us a little bit more about your role as well?
Gotcha. So if I was to share a interesting, outlandish fact, it would be that growing up, I had the pleasure of playing against LeBron James probably 3 to 4 times a year from maybe sixth grade to sophomore year, which was the last time we played each other in the national tournament, which would have been, freshman year, which would have been in Bristol on both sides, Virginia and in Tennessee. So that would be my fun fact. And then,
wow.
Yeah. So
I had no idea. It's so cool.
When you play like a game of tell two truths and a lie, I tend to use that as one of the pieces in there, and oftentimes people assume that that's not accurate, but it's a huge part of my upbringing. Love athletics growing up.
Wow.
It has definitely shaped my perspective and how I contribute to the world today. So it wouldn't be who I am today without it.
That's amazing. I had no idea. I can't believe we didn't cover that in the last intro, but that's freaking amazing.
Well, I can't tell you everything. I gotta keep some things, as a mystery, and then kind of provide them as surprises, right? And,
Yeah.
and that,
wow. Well, you got me. You definitely surprised me.
Gotcha. And what was the other question?
Yeah. I'd love to learn more a little bit about your role as well.
Gotcha. So I've been blessed to serve as the Vice President for Enrollment at Susquehanna since May 1 of 2020. And within the context of my role, it requires me or challenges me to be the Chief Enrollment Officer to support all things enrollment, not only from strategy, but thinking about new enrollment and supporting things as far as returning enrollment, so retention and persistence. I oversee the admissions team as well as the student financial service team. And so that is the broader umbrella, not only in the sense of the recruiting function and the admission function, but also thinking about the financial aid function, the student account function, the financial aid policy function, and then obviously the ways in which we collaborate and support the broader campus community. And then also my role allows me to support the senior leadership level conversation as well as one of the senior leaders that reports to the president. And so being able to engage at the 1,000-foot level with my senior colleagues across campus to challenge ourselves to help move the institution forward in a positive way, in a thoughtful and strategic way, while always keeping students at the center.
That's amazing. I know you mentioned leadership just now. I know you've quickly moved up, just looking at your past history, It's really impressive. And I was wondering if you could share any tips within leadership in higher ed. Maybe it's specific to enrollment admissions, but I'd love to learn more about that.
Gotcha. Well, as I'm thinking about the tips that I would reference, or a recent article I may reference, I think that the tidbits that I would share would maybe go across careers, go across areas of interest outside of higher education as well. But the first piece I would do is just reference a recent article by the National Association for College Admissions Counseling CEO Angel Perez. He had a leadership piece that was included inside higher ed within the last 24 to 48 hours. And it's a great read, quick read, but it hit on some key aspects that I would want to share with the audience today in thinking about how to conserve your energy and thinking through in any leadership role. It is a marathon, it is not a sprint. Thinking about making decisions with intent, so being intentional and thoughtful about how you approach decisions, and always thinking about asking the why as you're trying to inform your decision making or your team's decision making. And then one of the other key pieces that stood out to me within the article was knowing when to say no, right? As you kind of move into larger capacities and have more responsibility to contribute to the success of an organization. Sometimes you are measured by what you are selective in taking on so that you can give your full energy and time to. And so those are things that I would share just from the article, and would encourage the listeners or those that are attending when it is live to go check it out. The other things that I kind of thought through, one is this notion of whether you call it remaining curious, whether you call it remaining inquisitive, or just creating space for life learning. As we transition into leadership capacities, we haven't made it yet. Like, it doesn't mean like we're perfect and we're good to go. And plus the world, whether you're thinking about higher education by itself or just the world around us, is ever changing, ever evolving, and there's always uncertainty around the corner. So just creating space for that creativity, for that inquisitiveness, and for life learning. The other I would say is developing your emotional intelligence, and I think that is about how do you engage and read people, how do you engage and read people within the context of a space, and how do you read situations. And I think that building that capacity, building that muscle from an emotional intelligence perspective can support leaders in how they navigate the one-to-one and folks that they're leading and supervising, how they navigate situations where they're overseeing broader sets of teams or organizations, but also in navigating certain situations and just being able to read the room and read the temperature and get a sense of how people are reacting to what's happening. The third, I would say, is developing and creating space for your people. The folks you're responsible for leading, guiding, or maybe you're just simply there in that instance to remove barriers so that they can be great, right? And so always thinking critically about making sure you're putting your people in position to be successful. There's a lot of survey assessments out there that when you think about great colleges to work for, one of the questions within the context of the survey is not only knowing exactly what you need to do and do you understand the direction that your team or your organization is heading in, but also do you have the resources that you need to be successful, and are there any barriers in the way? And so thinking through that. And the last one I would say is, oftentimes there's that balance between, do I continue to sharpen my strengths, like the things that I'm amazing at or I'm great at, or do I put a lot of energy into the things that are areas of opportunity? I won't call them weaknesses, but I'll call them areas of opportunity. And so I think I would say continue to sharpen your strengths and spend time shaping your areas of opportunity. You don't necessarily need to be as great in your areas of opportunity as you are in your strengths, but it is helpful for you to be competent enough in those areas to contribute, as well as being mindful of who's around you, because you may have people around you that you collaborate with or you're responsible for leading that may indeed be an expert or have a strength in that area that can support you and align with you to move things forward. So those would be the tidbits I would share under the guise of leadership.
Got it. I think both your first and third point really resonated with me. I'm currently in a newer position of leadership as well, and focus and prioritization is something I struggle with literally every day. Saying no to things, I think, is one tactic you mentioned. It's super difficult, and I feel like I do have shiny object syndrome sometimes. But yeah, it's really hard to focus and prioritize what needs to come first. Do you have an example, like, in your past work or something maybe you're working on today where you've had to make that decision and picking one or the other in terms of what comes next?
Sure. So in the sense of focus and prioritization, the example I would use is a daily one. I often make my agenda of to-dos the evening before or the day before. So before I leave work, I often have laid out, okay, these are the things I need to focus on tomorrow, and making space for the what ifs in between the meeting times of things that may be scheduled, but truly prioritizing, like, these are the things that are priorities tomorrow, and this is how I want to allocate my time. In terms of kind of maybe a long-term gaze and not being caught up with the new shiny object or the shining light or the new initiative that is being shared or proposed, is we have a strategic enrollment plan that aligns with the university strategic plan through 2026. And so what guides me is the new shiny object initiative partnership, does it align with the direction we're headed in under the key initiatives towards total enrollment, towards transfer enrollment, towards international enrollment and diversifying those markets, or towards diversity, equity, and inclusion and increasing our student body from a BIPOC student perspective? Does it fit in those categories? And then does it help us enhance the ways in which we engage and communicate with students through our enrollment communications efforts? And so that in itself is one of the guiding bodies that kind of guides my work. A teammate can come up with something exciting, and if it fits within that, I want to have further conversation with them about it, consider resource allocation for it, and empower them to move forward with it. If it does not fit within that framework, then it likely is something that we may say, well, that may be a great idea, but in the context of the direction we're headed in right now, we're not going to allocate resources towards that in this moment because it doesn't align with our priorities.
Gotcha. Yeah. So your planning ahead of time really sets the tone for what you're able to say yes and no to ahead of time, so you don't have to be in a situation where you're having to make decisions and think about things on the spot.
Yeah, and I would say lastly, when you think about decision making, right, it's important to understand who is ultimately responsible for making the decision, and then if you in your position, you're the person who has the authority in that instance to confirm and finalize the decision. It's thinking through, if you're engaging others to get their perspective and you're bringing other voices to the table, how do you help them ascertain what is up for discussion, debate, what you are open to as far as perspective and feedback? How far along the journey are you in making a decision? And are you making a collaborative one, or are you just getting perspective and then you're going to finalize the decision? And so I think as those things are happening, it's important to have a sense of that, because it's also helpful for the people that are around you, and they'll get a sense of how you, over time, are consistent in making decisions.
Got it. I think your last point is something I don't really think about a lot, which is, you said areas of opportunity, right, versus areas of strength. Like, how do you come into that position and, like, understand, like, I guess I'm trying to understand, like, how do you come into that position and understand how much time to give to both, like, or being, I guess, vulnerable to saying, like, here are things I'm not good at. Like, how does that work at the leadership level? I can think of it in terms of, like, sports really well. Like, I play tennis and my backhand is really bad, but so, like, often I'll just go with my strength, which is my forehand. And I'm trying to think of how that works in the leadership position. It's not something I really think about too much.
Gotcha. Well, one of the things I think that's interesting about leadership, and I'll say this before I maybe give an example, is sometimes people think that you got into leadership because you're an expert in everything that you're responsible for.
Definitely, yeah.
And there are other instances which, in many ways, a little bit more realistic and accurate, is sometimes you were good at certain things and then leadership opportunities are presented to you. But in those leadership opportunities, there are often things that you are now going to be responsible for that you don't necessarily have the background in, right? So you can look at it through that lens. Alternatively, I think it's about how we are wired. And maybe that's the better way that I would say it. So our institution uses Gallup strengths, and you do the strength assessment, and then you see what your top strengths are across a continuum of 30 plus, but you also have a sense of where there's some areas of opportunity or where you're not as strong. And from a senior leadership team perspective, our whole senior leadership team can see each other's strengths, and then thinking through that in the ways in which you're collaborating with other people, that can be a helpful resource, right? And then it also challenges you to be humble and transparent, right? I may know that strategy and execution and learning and responsibility are in my top 5. I know that. And I think it's pretty clear in how I navigate work and how I collaborate with others that it's easily something that they can perceive. Relationship and different forms of communication for me may be at the latter end, right? And so owning that, and then thinking through how do I shape that and how do I pay it close enough attention so that I am spending enough time so that the people that I work more closely with understand that I do value them as people. I do value the relationship that I have with them, even though it may not be a strength. And how do I demonstrate that I am improving or seeking to improve on how I observe, how I listen, which is a part of communication, in addition to checking in on things like from a leader perspective, if I'm casting a vision, am I checking that it's clear to others? Do they clearly understand the direction we're headed in and the why? If I am working with somebody and asking them to take on a project, do they clearly understand the purpose of the project, the timing of the project, the budget for the project, the deadline for the project? And if they will be leading it on their own, if they'll have some support from me or from others. And so I think those are the ways in which I would look at it in that way. The example that I would give is, in some instances, people who emerge into vice president from enrollment roles, they can come from all walks of life. But in some ways, they come from admission in some ways. Mm-hmm. What that means that you haven't necessarily had the same level of understanding and skill set and experience in financial aid or student accounts or financial aid policy. You may have had some exposure to it, but it's not at the same level of understanding how to build a recruitment plan. It's not at the same level of understanding how to develop a holistic application review process. It's not the same thing as understanding how to build a plan so you can follow up and properly engage students in the market. Those things are a little bit more commonplace, and you've had a lot of time to build the experience in those areas. And so then you say, okay, well, how do I demonstrate that and be very transparent with my student, my AVP for student financial services in areas that I don't have the background in, areas that I don't have the expertise in? How can I leverage his skill set? How can I step back so he can step forward in areas that I'm clearly knowing that I don't, but also be very clear for him and to him and others that this is something that is in my development plan. I do intend to continue to build my understanding and knowledge, not only on financial aid leveraging and scholarships, grants, but also in understanding financial aid policy, understanding institutional eligibility, that over time I am building those foundations to shape my experiences in that area. Though I will never necessarily, I may not ever get to a point where I'm at the level of expertise as a subject matter expert that he is and some of my colleagues in student financial services are.
Got it. So kind of what I'm hearing, just repeating back what I'm hearing, is being very transparent and communicating, your strengths and opportunities, or areas for opportunity, but also be, willing to learn and develop those areas of opportunities. And that helps build that trust that, you're working on it, you're trying to improve it, but you're asking for help.
Yeah, and if you think about the piece I just shared, that ties back into not only the notion of remaining curious, inquisitive, and creating space for life learning, it goes back to the sharpening strengths and shaping areas of opportunity. But it also, I think, leans into the notion of the emotional intelligence piece, because it's not just for others, it's also about how you show up in a space. And then it's also the notion of creating space for your people, right? Mm-hmm. I'm creating space for others to show their expertise in areas that may not be mine. And in leadership roles, we don't need the light. We don't always need the recognition, right? Allow our people to get the proper recognition and support that they deserve as well.
That's amazing. That's super insightful. I can literally I know we work in different industries, slightly different industries, but I can definitely apply some of all that into my day-to-day, which is super helpful. Thank you. I'll switch gears a little bit. I know, so we had one conversation before this, and, I was like, hey, what should we talk about? What are you passionate about? And I think you mentioned 20 things. So I said, DJ, let's create a series. Let's do 10 episodes. And
see you all next week.
Right. But I thought one thing that really resonated with me, and what I believe is timely is, the impact of COVID on marginalized communities. And what do you think schools can do to mitigate that and to reach some of their DEI goals or any of their inclusivity goals? I know that COVID's just had a big impact on that, and we talked about this a little before.
Yeah. So I was in thinking through that, right, and asking the question, what can schools do? I want to be mindful of that I want to speak from the lens in which I have experience in, so I don't want to pretend to speak from a secondary school or primary school perspective, because I don't have that expertise, I don't have that experience, and I know there's amazing colleagues in that space that can contribute to that conversation. But I tried to look through, okay, well, what example would I use? So if you're thinking about students who are in secondary school or in high school and are considering college, or at least in position to have college be their next step, it's how do you connect with secondary school partners or community-based organization partners that still may be in positions where they don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the resource, the areas that they're in still may have challenge with being in person, and there's created challenges with the virtual elements of the world. How do we provide our support in the form of outreach to support essay writing prep and coaching? How do we step in and provide support for FAFSA completion and processing workshops to contribute and support those conversations? When you're also thinking about students in the prospective student phase, how do you initially consider what initiatives align with your institutional mission, right? Because mission kind of should in many ways drive what you consider, what you do, and how you organize yourself as an institution in support of access orientation towards marginalized communities or the cross sections of marginalization. And so when you think about some of the hot topics in our space now, one example would be, I think the buzzword is flipped admissions practices, right? So instead of the traditional process of a student saying, hey, I want to apply to Concept 3D University, so I'm going to go through the formal application process through their individual app, the coalition app, the common app, or an alternative. It's how does the institution come to them in a specific platform or space that says it presents that you meet our criteria, we're coming to you to extend an offer of admission, and then we can navigate the relationship that way. And so, Concourse Global is a tool that comes up for international students. Greenlight Match is a tool or a strategy or initiative that comes out through colleagues over at EAB. And there are other organizations that are piloting some version of a direct admission or flipped admission tool and process to change the space, but also to be a little bit more accessible than in our current environment. And then I would also say thinking about alternative outreach methods based on the different identifiers that you may have for your student population in those cross sections. Data would suggest that FAFSA completion is down, so you shouldn't expect new student enrollment to be up. Excuse me. And so thinking through that, what cross sections of populations are you seeing in your own institutional data that you could contribute to providing some additional support to, even if they're not coming to your school,
right?
But you can provide them support to still see higher education as an opportunity for them. And then the last piece I would maybe reference is, if you're talking about those that are currently enrolled or plan to enroll, what is your institution doing to be welcoming, to be inclusive, and to support and welcome diversity in a way that gets to the point where those students or those folks that have marginal identities would say, I feel like I belong, right? And so you can't do belonging first because there's a process to that, right? I need to get to somewhere and feel a sense of I'm welcome. And then through that, I'm navigating experiences, and I'm like, okay, they seem to be striving towards inclusive practices, right? And now you've got, I felt welcome, I see inclusive practices. And through all those things, I can potentially get to a point where I feel like I belong. And so what is your institution doing within that space to make sure you're measuring and assessing that thing on a frequent basis, whether it's campus climate surveys, whether you're looking at data from the National Student Survey Assessment, or NESE, in the sense of, okay, like, the students are saying this about their level of engagement, their level of feeling like they're included in the campus community. And I may have messed up what the NESE acronym actually spells out, so you may have to course correct that one later. But nonetheless, those are the pieces where you think about what you can do. And if they've withdrawn, hopefully institutions have re-enrollment strategies where they can support a successful return, not only for retention, but also towards retention, so that student, however they identify, can be in position to earn a credential, and can potentially just transform their life from a social mobility perspective.
Got it. I had one question that I thought of is, do you think the tools that are available now, today versus a few years ago, better support DEI practice, or do you think it's gone against it? Like, what are your thoughts there?
From the space in which I participate in, I'm mindful that across higher ed there are
it's different
positions of chief equity inclusion officers that do this this is what they do, or they're passionate about it, this is their career. I don't want to act as though I can speak from that position or from that space.
Right.
But what I would say is I think the resources continue to expand. I think what is available to communities in the sense of resources and tools continue to be easily accessible or more accessible. But I also think that there's the human side of the process. And as human beings, regardless of where we fall on the cultural, intercultural continuum, and our ability to navigate difference, there has to be an ownership of navigating the experiences to build our understanding, to develop and broaden our capacities, and then not to just take a course, not to just take an assessment, but to truly start thinking through, how does this show up in my day-to-day work with those that I get a chance to engage with, in instances where they may come from a background that's different from mine, where we may differ on political views, religious views, whatever it may be. How do we start to implement these things to be able to successfully navigate and engage across difference? And so I think there's the two pieces. You can have as many tools and as many resources as you want, but if the other part isn't there and willing to step up and contribute and participate and develop and grow and challenge their own perspective, beliefs, and background, then it's still going to be a long journey.
That's amazing. Thank you. Yeah, that helped me understand a little bit more. Appreciate that. I think we're gonna wrap it up just around now. But I was wondering if I maybe tweeted this recording to LeBron James, do you think there's a chance he'll listen to it?
Given how long it's been, there's a good chance he probably wouldn't remember it. And it's interesting. I remember when his movie came out, about his his high school career before he transitioned to NBA. I want to say it's called Love of the Game. I remember being super excited to see that because I knew the journey it was going to take, and was very hopeful that my team would have had some inclusion in the film, given how frequent we played against them, and we were not. But nonetheless, I do remember one of the scenes in the movie is when, as an 8th grader, they went to the national championship at the national tournament. It was at Disney World of Sports in Florida. And we were there in the stands. Obviously, we had lost a little earlier in the tournament, but we were there to see the game. And so I don't think that he remembered me. He's had a lot of other experiences since then.
Right.
And played a little bit better, or should I say a lot of better of competition since then as well. So I doubt it, but it would be very interesting if he did.
That's amazing. Well, maybe I'll still try and tag him and see what happens.
Hopefully.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really great insight and great conversation. I personally learned a lot about leadership, so that's huge for me, selfishly. I was wondering if you had a LinkedIn profile or a website you'd like to share with our listeners.
Sure. I mean, if you're on LinkedIn and you use LinkedIn, happy to connect with you. Just search DJ Menifee and happily connect with you that way. I also want to make sure that I thank you for the opportunity, and also thank Concept 3D for this opportunity as well. Again, I'm hopeful that there is something within the message that resonates with folks that they can implement in their day-to-day and that can support them in their journeys as well.
Thank you so much, DJ. Appreciate that.
All right. Thank you so much.